none of us are one-dimensional. None of us are two-dimensional. We are multi-dimensional beings. If I'm going to create it, I'm going to try to share it. I'm going to try to get people to see it, as many people as I can to see it and hear it. Because one person coming up to you and saying, yo, I vibe with that song, it means a lot because you're like, wow, something that was completely derived from me, somebody else can appreciate it. And it's just a cool thing.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Market to Me, the podcast presented by Brandon Barron. I'm your host, Joe Barron. And with me today, I have somebody who wears multiple hats, just like many of my other guests. He's a lawyer, a musician, a photographer, and an event planner. He does it all. He is Larry Krayn.
What's up, brother? Great to be here. Those hats I'm always switching them. And today I'm a guest on here. I really appreciate the platform to come and kick it with you and talk a little bit.
Can I kick it? Yes, you can.
Always.
You've done music for a very long time. Pretty much how I knew you started doing music. And then at some point you tripped and fell into the legal field. Yeah. But now you're stepping back a little bit and doing music again. And you also bringing in a different point of view by way of photography. So how did you, it just seems like you're leaning back to the creative field, and it seems like the side hustle of being a lawyer is just pays the more income at the moment, and then but your real full-time job is all the fun creative stuff. Would you say that's accurate, or would it be wrong?
I think it's somewhat accurate. I mean, my buddy said to me a couple of years ago, he looked at me dead in the eye and he said, you ever think being a lawyer is your side hustle? And I was like, yeah, kinda. The law I practice enables me, even when I'm going to work, when I'm working on it, to care about my job. So there is, and I've been blessed to the point that I've worked my way up in that profession. Not all the way up, and there's still more road to cover here, but enough that the transition day to day is kind of seamless, where the legal work I'm doing and the creative work is all just part of my calendar and agenda, and I'm really able to kind of seamlessly feel like I'm tackling projects that I care about every day and not kind of separating them. That being said, you talked about, like, we met back in our high school years through a mutual friend, and music has always been, it was a creative outlet, right? Because I kind of only dabbled in piano and things. I never really mastered an instrument. I loved poetry and writing, so kind of hip hop music and beat making. And in the 90s and early 2000s, beat making became an art form of its own musically. So keyboards and music theory and things, it was a great way to express myself. But, when we were going through our late 20s and we stayed in contact, and a lot of people we know were in that world, it gets hard after a while. I tried to make it on some kind of big stage, and you have those dreams as a kid, and then I tried to get behind the scenes and majored in communications to learn engineering and things, which is how I kind of got into the podcast world later. It just didn't pan out. And so I was like, look, I need to make a living. I need to feed myself. And I worked, dude, at that time I was working behind deli counters. I was working in supermarkets. I was working opening pools, running electrical wire, on my hands and knees in old attics with insulation scratching up my skin. And I was like, yo, this has all given me really good life perspective, and I value this, but I want to get in a profession where I have a little bit more, work-life balance, where I have some benefits and a stable salary and the ability to kind of grow that over time. Let me pause everything creative and get into, and it wasn't just like, oh, let me flick a switch and go into law school, but it was more like, hey, I've kind of been, while some people did and some people didn't, I was always accumulating those college credits while I was doing the music hustle and working the side jobs. I didn't know quite where I was going, switched majors a bunch of times, community college, and, Willie P, then Rutgers, and eventually I wound up saying, all right, I got these credits, let's flick the switch, let's finish out the last couple semesters, get my bachelor's, and try to apply to law school. At that point, bro, to be honest with you, I was 27 years old, and I thought, okay, I think the art creativity chapter of mine is closed. In the previous generation, I'd witnessed a lot of guys kind of just close it. Oh, I have this old keyboard collecting dust. I used to be in a band. I used to have a camera. I kind of put it away. I thought it was done. Went to law school, didn't really do a ton of creative things, although my mind was always going. Got out of law school and went to work for a few years in a legal title that I thought was kind of averse or mutually exclusive to a lot of creative expression. And so I put it away, but it kept creeping back. And really, I would hear songs and I would think, oh, that'd be a good sample. I would get ideas for concepts that I wanted to tell through lyrics or through song. And gradually over time, I live in Newark, New Jersey, and that's really been a boon for me because there's a lot of people I discovered through just getting out socially who are hustlers during the day in the professional industries who have advanced degrees, but at night they're poets, they're musicians, they're writers, and they're artists. And so I kind of got into that community. Started writing for a periodical called The Newarker here, which got my writing into focus a little more. I got a new mic, I got a new keyboard, and I just started doing things for fun, recording, built up to actually wanting to release another album. And the photography, I know we'll probably go into this incrementally, but everybody has a phone. And I started taking pictures. I noticed that mine, hey, I have a little bit of a talent for this, and the phone isn't cutting it. Let me learn how to use and manually shoot on a real camera. Wound up investing in one, wound up starting to shoot and learning that. And the thing is with me, bro, whether it's law school, music, I just have this personality where I see something, I'm like, well, why aren't I here? Why aren't I featured there? Why isn't my work in the coffee shop? My photos. Why isn't my music in front of these people? So I just have this drive. So when I started doing photography or music, or whatever, I just tackled it head on. And it kind of gave me this well-rounded life now where I'm able to do all these things. And now I'm in the process, Joe. We talk about branding, and that's your forte. I'm trying to get all these things I do into a cohesive kind of branding thing and a platform. And I think they all feed into each other naturally just with my style. But to actually do it is where I'm headed now. I know that was long-winded, but it's kind of a early intro into me.
So speaking of Newark, because you ended up there as the hub, like I was like, yeah, great intro, but you're in Newark. What is it about Newark? Because I've noticed that it's kind of like this now new cultural hub where it's just maybe part of it is gentrification, maybe it was always there and never got the proper shine that it needed. But it just seems like this place where people are starting to thrive and actually build businesses and more it's a lot more arts. Like there's a lot, I've seen a lot more painting, more murals. It's really becoming its thing. So is that like part of what drawn you to Newark to be part of that community?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a Jersey guy from the suburbs, right? And so, yes, we have New York City, we have Philadelphia, and I think a lot of people from the suburbs of New Jersey, and rightfully so, right? Our networks are there, everything comes from New York City or Philly if you're in South Jersey. And people aspire to that. They consider that their major city, whatever. But I also had and my family's from New York, from Brooklyn, I mean, but I had a certain allegiance and interest in Jersey as a geographic and cultural entity in and of itself, right? Onto itself. And Newark really is, if you look at every major highway in New Jersey, you look at every major train line, you look at the airport, it all flows through Newark, right? And so with it flowing through Newark, I thought of Newark as kind of the cultural and business hub of New Jersey. Then
Okay.
look, I went to Rutgers, Newark. Right. And I had grown up always at Rutgers, New Brunswick, and I still go there, and I have a lot of love for the university overall. But I went to Rutgers, Newark, which is ingrained more with the history of Newark and the intellectual, there's an intellectual like rigor and edge to it at Rutgers, Newark that is involved and intertwined with the history of Newark, which is a lot of industrialization, deindustrialization, great migration. There is obviously a gentrification that you would see with a lot of other major cities, and the city intentionally invests in the arts, and a lot of people say the arts kind of paved the way for that type of redevelopment. But I do think Newark has always had. I mean, Amiri Baraka was an activist and a very edgy and controversial political figure in Newark back in the early 60s. And when you had the riot, or some call it the rebellion, in Newark, he was a essential figure. And Raz Baraka, the mayor, is his son. Raz Baraka was featured on the Fugees' The Score album, like when we were kids. And growing up, when you get older, you realize, well, some of this stuff, yeah, the Fugees were huge nationally and Jadakiss, but he said, why is my buzz in LA not like it is in New York? A lot of this stuff, like even the Fugees, we had like there's a lot of cultural influence, I think, in New Jersey, New York, that we are not even aware is more robust in our area than even nationwide. And so there's a lot of artistic intertwined with intellectualism and somewhat of a debate oriented type thing in Newark, and I was really drawn to it. There were politics going on, the when Cory Booker was running back then, and there was the documentary, and there was, they built the Prudential Center, and I came to school here, and it all kind of wound up a confluence. Me being a student of history and I think always being more of a urban dweller at heart. I came here, and when I got here, and it had still this reality and grit to it with this untapped beauty that growing up outside of it in Jersey, you don't realize the sprawling beauty of Branch Brook Park in the spring, and it has the most cherry blossoms in the country, even more than DC. You don't appreciate all the history of the Pennsylvania Railroad and how the lines were rearranged into New Jersey Transit and Amtrak and how that had an influence. You don't realize that a Supreme Court Justice Brennan had his law offices downtown in a twin skyscrapers in the Artifacts video from the where they're on the wrong side of the tracks and talking about tagging, that they're showing the skyline. Those two buildings at that time were abandoned, the two biggest buildings in the city. Now they're reactivated, and I actually lived in one a little bit when I first moved here. I got so enthralled with the history. And I think a lot of people that have moved here, some are transplants from all over the country that come here for school and then get ingrained, and they want to be close to New York, and then they wind up falling in love with Newark. A lot of others, Joe, they're from around New Jersey, and they have rediscovered kind of, well, this is like this beating heart, even though it has had its struggles, kind of is this beating heart of my state. And there's a lot of art and creativity. And there's sometimes I'd be out at night, and yeah, there might be an artist sitting next to me, and the other side of me is like a homicide detective out for the night. The other side is like a professor, and there's like a real grit. And I don't know what New York was like in the 70s, and I'm sure it happens in New York now a little bit, but when I see these old films of New York and stuff, like who was there, what was going on, there's that edgy, legitimate grit where there's a professional guy walking past whatever's going on down there in the basement apartment, and it thrives in Newark, and I was just drawn to it. And over time, it's kind of embraced me, and I've embraced it, and it's been a big catalyst for me.
Nice, yeah, because I've seen people. It just seems to be, again, like it's the spot to head over to, especially if you're from New York, where prices are going up, everything's going up, things are a little weird, and people are deciding whether they should go move to Jersey City, Hoboken, move to Newark, or somewhere in the suburbs, in Jersey. It seems to be the place where it still has a city vibe with some style, and people want to keep that going, keep it moving, just kind of add their own spin on it, and just not to erase the history, but like kind of to like just to add to it. There's nothing wrong with growing a community and improving it. I was having a discussion where we just, if something always looks like garbage, it's kind of the community's involvement to help clean it up and do their part, and don't leave it up to somebody else to do it. If you see it, just do your part, be accountable. Everybody's living in the area. If you want more art, what are we going to do? We got to create more art shows. And for you like using the word grit. And so it's like Newark has the grittiness because it always has, it will always be that. There's the ironworks, which is kind of like the industrial kind of area of Newark, but there's also the grit of actually like working hard and getting stuff done. Like, to my point, what I'm saying is where everybody's creating business and creating events like you did. You used exquisite grit to kind of implement your own gallery show for not even just for yourself, but for other artists and other photographers. Was that kind of like your imprint in getting yourself known in Newark, or like just being a part of the community?
I think so. Initially, I was actually having a conversation with somebody at one point, and this was a while ago. And this person was like an artist from the arts kind of community, and I actually had volunteered with the library, the Newark Public Library. I was a public library ambassador for a long time. And we were just talking, and I said, oh, we should invite this person or something to DJ this event. And this person said, well, I'm in the arts community, and I don't know if that person's really going to bring out the crowd we want or whatever. And I said, I'm around the arts community too, and I think this or that. And she goes, well, you're not in the arts community. And I didn't take offense. And I just said, well, how would you characterize me then in this Newark, community? I would have considered myself one of those artsy type people that live here. And she said, no. Like, she laughed and she goes, like, you're like the yuppies. And I have a couple friends who I think also would have considered, they're very creative and they're doing these entrepreneurial things. They're creating. One of them is a college professor by day and a stand-up comedian by night. Just opened up a club, Justin Williams. Back to your point about building the city and the way it's happening, he has this working theory kind of academically where Newark is, yes, maybe it's gentrifying in some way, but it's gentrifying in like a African American, predominant middle class way, which is an interesting style and way that this city is shaping itself, which draws a lot of people because it has its own unique kind of culture and things and history that go with that. There was a time, to answer your question, I was in the community, and Newark has a lot of lawyers. Like I said, it's also a hub of the legal community in New Jersey and the
Yeah, because
law.
isn't it Rutgers Law there
Rutgers
and
Law is
Seton
here,
Hall
and
Law?
Seton Hall. So the only other law school is in Camden, Rutgers Camden. So there's a legal hub, a lot of major law firms, things like that. So I was in that community, and there's a general bar scene and things that I was in, and I would attend artistic events, but I don't know. I think there was a part of me going back, and I was here and I was ingrained, and people knew who I was in the 2010s, especially the late 2010s, 17, 18, 19. But I looked and I knew myself as an artist, as more than just this lawyer, but some people in Newark weren't aware of that side of me. And so when we talk about Exquisite Grit, it started as just, I like the name because to me, Exquisite Grit is the approach in everything I do, i.e., right, I have grit, but it's exquisite taste, and I'm an attorney, and I know how to kind of put the cufflinks on and the tie clips and do that, but I also see the beauty in the old courthouse with the elevator not working and the fan whizzing behind me. That's real.
It's a nice
practice.
juxtaposition.
Yes, so Newark, yeah, like it's gritty outside, but walk into the lobby of that old building that looks like it's abandoned from the outside, and there's this gorgeous marble and gold and brass interior from years past. And so I started to emerge again, re-emerge, which is kind of what I alluded to before, as an artist. And I was at first apprehensive about A, how my professional colleagues would receive who I was artistically, and B, how my Newark colleagues who had seen me as, oh, you're in this box, you're a lawyer, how would they respect it, appreciate it, or would they be skeptical of it? And quite frankly, as I emerged, everybody embraced it in a big way,
Interesting.
more so than I even would think. So Exquisite Grit, the Grit Gallery, really just emerged. It's a really beautiful confluence of entrepreneurship and Newark Grit, Joe. I'll tell you really briefly, Steve Hughes is the owner of Newark Local Beer, which is a local brewery. I actually wound up meeting him just by walking in there and having a beer. He was a financial worker in the city, New York City. He and his wife needed more space. They moved out to Essex County, to Montclair. He started brewing in a shed because this guy, George, who has George to the Rescue TV show, who remodels houses, he was doing a pilot for remodeling people's sheds. No joke. He remodeled Steve's shed as a brewery because he was a local brewer who just did it as a hobby. Again, a
Okay.
professional who had a hobby. He started brewing in his backyard for his friends in Montclair. Wound up getting a lease in the Walker House, which is at the former Verizon, former New Jersey Bell headquarters building downtown Newark, now repurposed into apartments. He got a whole brewery space in the downstairs there. I was a blossoming writer for the Newarker, which Justin Williams and my friend Manny Antonez and a couple other people founded to be a Newark like periodical or zine these days we'd call it, even though we don't have print yet. And I had written fiction for them and been accepted, so I started getting involved with them, and I wanted to do a profile on Steve and the brewery. So I sat with him, I interviewed him, I wrote his whole story. That's why I know all these things. Put it in a Newarker article that's still available online. It got a lot of views, people still read it. And I got cool with Steve. So he has decor in his brewery and different art groups coming in and hanging different art. That's how these scenes usually go. One day he just said to me, I really like your pictures because he followed me on Instagram. You should
Okay,
hang
cool.
your stuff in the brewery. Now, Joe, going back 15, 20 years, I remember knowing some guys, some certain characters who own certain clubs in Central Jersey saying, hey, I know your music. You should do a show. But just like back then, Joe, I saw a bigger opportunity for more people. I'm not just going to showcase my art. I'm not just going to do my music. I'm going to bring in a bunch of other people whose art I appreciate because I also know how hard it is with the gatekeepers. So just to keep it 100, early on, when I was trying to get my photography out, there were some gatekeepers or people, who were notoriously in this art world or that art world who weren't necessarily seeing me as a peer or taking me seriously. So sometimes you got to do it yourself. Because I knew Steve, because I fought my way in, now I just have this space. And instead of using it for myself, I brought in two friends to the first Grit Gallery.
Hmm.
Charles David, who's actually from England, who resettled in Newark and he won an award for a documentary he did. Does a lot of photography. He came in, and my friend Gary Sprangle, who's from Harrison, right across the river, and has been writing and taking photos for a long time. They hopped in because I didn't know what I was doing yet. I didn't want to bring a whole crowd and screw up. Brought them in. It was really successful. Brought my buddies who were DJs, DJ Reem Supreme, who's actually He's law enforcement by day, DJ by night. So this just shows this hustle culture we have here. And he spun. It was awesome. People came in, they loved it. So I expanded it. The thing was, Joe, now people started looking at me all of a sudden like, oh, I know you and you're serious and I know who you are. And I was invited to more things, and it expands that way. Sometimes you got to push your way in the door, but once you're in, you're there. But here's my thing. I'm not going to push my way in the door and then slam it behind me. I'm going to push it open. So now these grit galleries, we've had so many people, some who are just starting out, some who've only been in a few shows, some who aren't sure how to print and frame, but their work is dope. And if I see the work and I think it's dope and I think it's ready to showcase to the world, I have no problem and I relish giving them the opportunity to showcase their work, to mingle within a community, and to not take ourselves too seriously sometimes. Like, all art is subjective and it's all expressive. And so I look at art, and if I dig it in some way, shape, or form, and they want to show people, I'll give them that chance. And Grit Gallery now, I don't do it too often because I don't want to water it down. It's not about the money. It's not about getting my name constantly there. It's about the art and the community. And that has been just one of many catalysts to kind of get myself taken more seriously within the art community as it's grown. And I think at this point, it seems like a flash since 2020, but this decade so far, I've really accomplished that, and I look forward to what's ahead with it.
There's a constant theme that I keep seeing over and over, and it's always, there's the gatekeepers, there's the people who stop you, but you need to show and prove. You need to show that the proof of concept, like, hey, I've done it, I'm able to do this, it works. Then people will open up their eyes, and they'll start listening, they'll start following, they'll do everything now what you thought you were hoping for before, but you didn't. There was no steps taken ahead, and you kind of have to take the first steps to kind of show people what your vision is, and you need to be able to prove that to them. You got to show them, and then from there, it's all about building your community, building your friends. From there, you can network with other people, see who's hanging out, who knows what that'll lead to later on, or maybe just later it'll just be just good friends. It's just, again, it's a community base, but you have to show proof, whether it's just, if it's proof to do another one, proof to do more, or get another gig with somebody else, or get even a project or whatever. It just kind of, you need to be able to show this and then let the floodgates open, and then it should all work from there. But at the end of the day, you have to show people that you can do it, and because people aren't believers, they have to see it first.
100%. And I would say, when you said, like, you never know, they could become friends, it could become this. One thing I've learned, I won in the court year 2015 to 2016 when I was first starting out. I worked for a judge in Paterson, New Jersey. And one of my duties as a law clerk in civil division was to mediate cases. And you had every kind of case: landlord-tenant disputes, lease disputes with a restaurant and a landlord, and disputes between a DJ and a wedding, a bride over, not playing the right song, everything you can imagine. And I actually won. I settled the most cases of anybody that court year. 92% of the cases I settled, and there was 105 cases I settled. And I bring that up to say most of that was from my experience. I was able to relate and understand the industries and the perspectives of everybody because I'd worked in a restaurant. I'd worked in residential, wiring, and been in those pre-constructed, structures. I'd been in music and been around DJs and club promotion. And so that life experience had a big impact. And then later in life, whether it's my music friends or a guy I met, who Elliot Fant, one of my best friends, I met him at a Super Bowl party just talking general social politics and things at a football party, Super Bowl party. He's a poet. He performed at one of the Grit Galleries, and he and his friend Sean Battle, another awesome guy who runs Evolu Culture here in Newark, they had me as a featured artist last 2 weeks ago, performing my reemergence, first time in 15 years, at one of their poetry events. My point is, if you don't do everything calculated just to have a return in a specific business venture or something else, and you go in with an open mind for things you enjoy, and you're just interested in sharing whatever it is you have with the world, and you're not scared to dip your toe into different things, you never know how those things organically, whether it's business or art or just personal, you never know how those organic experiences and organic relationships will play out in the future and how much they'll mean to you. I mean, look at you and I. We've known each other for years. Started out, hey, I'm interested in hip hop. I like to look at mixtapes and check things out. Let's just riff. Let's talk about that. Then, hey, I do logos. And we've maintained those relationships. Now you're in Grit Gallery. You're featuring your photography because that's something you've always done and been talented out. Now I'm sitting on your podcast. I mean, and it's all organic, right? It's not like, oh, in 20 years, Joe Barron is going to have me on their podcast. And that's no, it's just like this guy's cool. I like talking to him. We maintain contact about nothing. Sometimes, like for years, we just touch base to talk about whatever's going on in the world. And now look at it. I think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone. I even got hung out with you. I was like, hey, this is a show. Come at even at. And speaking of the Newark local beer, I'm like, just come out, come through. We'll just hang out. We talked. We had a cold one and just BS. Like we were just friends. Like we just hung out. That's really part of it. Is I think it's building friendships and building relationships in a way where like, okay, maybe it'll benefit us in the future or may not, but like, hey, it's someone good to know, and if I know somebody who needs somebody, I could connect them in the future. At the end of the day, it's just really just like we're all trying to connect. Well, right? There's levels up to it of like there's professional and then there's a personal level, and it's great. And so that was the photography, and you just got into the photography because you were just using your phone one day and just like snap, 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 snap. It looks like I have a good eye for this, and then you started learning the technique, and then you started practicing more and more. Is that like how that went for you?
Yeah, and I think what it really was. I mean, I used to have videos of me driving around areas that I thought was interesting with the music I was playing, and people would say, I mean, that I realized that was a form of art at some point. You know, some people hated it. They're like, I'm sick of seeing you stupid. One guy, like, stop Google mapping the state. No one cares. But other people really liked it, and they started. It became like an art form. Like, yo, I love the vibes. I see you. I realized that I was feeling a certain essence of a moment in time, whether it be, say, 2 a.m., snow on the ground, walking out of somewhere in an alleyway in Newark. There's a vibe there that if I were a filmmaker or I was watching a film, I would want to feel or consume or be able to portray in the first person. So there's a vibe here. There's a moment here that I think should be preserved, and I think other people might enjoy from their own perspective. And so there's different styles of photography, as we know. And some street photography, for instance, is very focused on documenting other people on the street, and that some of that's the best photography I've ever seen. My photography is more put yourself where I am and look at what I'm looking at. Like first person, like if you're gaming, it's not the zoomed out third person, it's the first person. And it started as, hey, I want to capture, look at this vibe. I can create and curate this vibe for you to see this, the essence of my life experience, this, okay, and especially I was single at the time, you know, this urban dwelling guy who's like a lawyer investigating by day and then out in this environment at night. Let me show you a snapshot of it, literally. And I got such a good reaction. I came up with the name, I don't even know how, Exquisite Grit, created a separate Instagram. Got such a good reaction from the phone pictures, which was just for fun. I had no intention of being a real, ever calling it took me years to say I'm a photographer. I never considered, I was like, I don't really know. I'm not one of those guys. I haven't taken all the classes. I don't know everything. How can I say that? I got the camera because I said I'd like to do more. This phone isn't cutting it. I'm not bringing, I don't have the technological ability to capture everything I want to in these snapshots. Let me just take a shot at it. It might be fun. And I'd always had interest in video because I'd done music videos in the past, but I hadn't dabbled in it. Got a camera, it was a Sony A6100, and I started reading, watching tutorials, reading, talking to, I met older photographers who were curating some of the shows I started to get into and were involved in the art scene in Newark and learned from them. Hey, you should do this, or when you're trying to capture that, you got to use flash, or take flash off, and I just started manually shooting, learning. What's an aperture? What's the rate? What's the relationship between the shutter speed and the aperture? And do I want motion in the shot? All stuff that's elementary to photographers.
Were you asking these older photographers, were you showing them your work at the gallery? Like, hey, look, this is what I'm done? Or were you just asking how they created that shot, what the technique was, what they used? Was it just like
I would ask
technical or just having a regular conversation? Like, oh, I'm interested in photography. I'm like, and do you got any tips for me?
It's kind of more that organic thing where like I'm a bold person, to be honest, where like I'm just like, yo, it looks good to me. I can feel it. I just know it's good or it's not. And same with music. It's good or it's okay. And I knew some stuff was good and some stuff was not. Other people were like, yo, I like this. Especially amateur lay people like my stuff. Technical people who are savvy, it wasn't that I always asked. Now, I might see their work and be like, how'd you do that? And I learned some things that way. Other than that, it was a lot of people saying to me, oh, yeah, all these people are looking at your work, but you know, your technique on this or that isn't really right. You know, you're messed up. And at first, I'm like a little bit like, okay, bro, but then I learn, I'm like, okay, let me listen. This person has a lot more experience. Let me take it in. Joe, but a lot of the other things I do, whether it's working Pro Tools or I just learn. I grab the camera And some of it was, okay, let me read some literature online, like legitimate literature from photographers. I have photography books studying like Saul Leiter, who has a style that I really dig, who I've based a lot of my big inspiration for me. Reading, what's his techniques? What's he doing? Why is he doing it? Some of it is reading his techniques, some of it's just looking at his work. And then it was taking the camera and just playing. Now I know what a shutter is, and I know what an aperture is, and I know the different lenses and their f-stops, but it's not always technically, well, the f-stop should be at a 1.8 so I can get the blur in the back. It's just play with it. Like, okay, and I got a feel because visually, intuitively, I'm like, yo, this looks dope. How do these knobs and these different tools within the camera get me there? And then I'm like, okay, the ISO, there's too much grain here. And I had to read, okay, your ISO shouldn't be this or that. So it's a combination.
So what I found was interesting is that I think, in a way, people. Let me say it this way. So Picasso always wanted to be able to draw like a little child. Couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it because he mastered the skills. And even though his cubism or whatever his art could be like shapes and deformed, wherever you see it, but to be able to draw just like a child and like the way they scribble and loose and everything, he just couldn't do it. To me, it sounds like he wants to be able to, hey, there's a whole range, like being able to draw like a beginner. So it's also, I feel like when I see people who start in photography, it's always interesting to me because that's an interesting perspective. That's a different look. You're just trying out, you're wrong on like the technique, absolutely wrong with the technique, with the f-stop, this, that, like, but that's fine. That's easy to learn. I say that loosely, but like more or less, you can learn that. It's really about the eye, the capture. What's the composition? Who's in focus? What's the main character? What you're sharing when you were doing it, what was interesting to me is that you're Larry Krayn taking photographs, but you're Larry Krayn, the secret detective at night, trying to capture these shadows and elements of like, oh, it's gritty, but it's pretty. It's, like it's a rose coming out of the snow, mountain of snow, which is like bizarre, but like, hey, that kind of blends together. Like, it's kind of these, you've seen these perspectives that I think most people, especially in the profession, especially in the creative field, they kind of like forget to think like, hey, let's take a step back. That's why like content creators, not all of them are professionals. It's just something that naturally developed and became a thing, and people became followers because they shared something interesting. They shared a different perspective. They gained the followers, and from there, they were able to even get like advertisements, get sponsors because of the way they shoot things, the way they entertain things, they create things. You could even argue that Mr. Beast, as his videos were so boring in the beginning, and now they're like engaging, where now he's built a business out of it, where he has a show on Amazon Prime TV, and other creators who are just like doing fun stuff, some of them being more authentic, but they're telling a story. They're telling a story that engages your emotions, creates the vision, and technically they probably learned on the way. And so like every time I see somebody who's new, whether it's drawing, photography, design, what have you, I'm sure it's across the board in many industries, most of them. Because I'm sure you can't act like a beginner, you can't be a lawyer and be like, hey, I didn't pass my bar, bud. What up, judge?
Some do.
But the point is, like, if you have a fresh perspective, like, it just, think like a beginner in a sense. When you're advanced, think what they would do and see how they would look like, and it kind of gives you a different perspective where it's like, hey, that's kind of a cool idea. I'll try that, but now I have all this advanced knowledge, all these years of experience to enhance it, to make it even better. Kind of separates an amateur from a professional, but you're thinking in a sense like how a beginner would think, and like, oh, cool idea. If I'm shooting something, that's a cool angle. That's the light. Oh, I never thought of it that way before, because you're so used to, especially if you're a professional, you're so used to seeing one way of vision. I'm like, all right, this is the project. I got to shoot this, and here's the deliverables. If you give yourself time to just like sit back and relax and just let the creativity flow, many ideas could come. And like, I'm not saying always think like a beginner, but like that could be one source of inspiration of a thought that you never thought of. Because I think everybody has a good idea. Everybody. Everybody has at least one good idea, and then you can see how you can implement that from there. That's how I think, especially if you're working on a team. There's always somebody that has one good idea. It may never work, but you won't know until you try it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the things that I've struggled with myself and in all the realms that I'm in, I mean, I do sports podcasts. I have my Logic and Larry podcast, which is a current events political podcast, which quite frankly is my baby, but doesn't take off nearly as much as some of the other ones because it doesn't have the built-in branding or customer base or demographic. But we're on this treadmill. We want to progress in our creative endeavors. We want to progress in our entrepreneurial endeavors. The fact is, as much as we might want to resist it or proclaim that we're outside of it, the social media and content realm is a focal point of human interaction and human eyeballs are on it. That's where they get a lot of their stuff. And so we have to participate in this arena. And where we sometimes, to your point, I think maybe lose track or struggle or start to not enjoy it as much or even create as good of work is we get so sucked into, well, what is the algorithm and what is the recommendation to get more eyeballs, right? I got to post every day. I got to post, at the same time. I have to answer this many comments or that many. And when you get caught up in that, you start to create your art geared that way. And sometimes it could get you sidetracked. Whereas if you take a step back, well, when are you actually inspired to create this? Where were you when you were a beginner? And yeah, the technical mastery of things always enhances your work because now the vision you have, the inspiration you have is actually going to be put into motion and manifested better, right? But also stepping back the way you were mentioning, stepping back and putting yourself in those beginner shoes back to the original inspiration, I think is a huge way to kind of recalibrate sometimes, Joe. Like come back to where your some of your best work comes from looking through a beginner's eyes when it was all about the inspiration, all about the motivation and the art itself rather than trying to increase views or get on that treadmill. So I agree with you.
Let's talk about this. Since you're having a creative resurgence again, you're doing photography, and then you're also now bringing back your music. That was part of you had to get it out. You had to get it out there. But what really kind of gave the push to be like, I'm 100% making music. I'm going to release it regardless of who wants to listen to it or not. Like, this is something that needs to be put out in the world. You're making it, and you want to share that with as many people as you want. Is there some sort of focus that you just made you like, I got to do it? It's in me, or I'm going to die and going to be really unhappy about it.
It's just the album when it comes out, and it's obviously under my artist name, IL Lusciato, and there's two singles available on all platforms now, and there's a video. One is Haunt Jersey, and it's more of a boom bap style rap, and one is I wrote a book that no one's gonna read, which is like a jazzy, all original instrumentation, and then me talking really about the fact that I did write a book. I wrote this novel, and it can't get it's hard to get published. Everybody knows that, but it's exceedingly difficult. And I think if you listen to the album, which is called Life's Legacy in a World Not for Everyone, and it's in two parts, I think there was just a story I think I had to tell, a snapshot. As I go through life and turning 40, which I turned recently, I guess not that recently anymore, I'm going on 41. You kind of start thinking about, okay, my life is going and there's phases and chapters of my life. And this album really captures a solid like 10-year period of my life from my 30 to 40. And it was a certain environment I was in, a certain lifestyle I had that'll never be replicated probably in my life. And the creativity was just flowing. And some of the stuff is introspective, some of it's societal critique, some of it's just a placeholder for, wow, this is a night I had, and just the same way the photography is, jump in my perspective real quick, let me show you what I see. And I guess it's just always been in me to be that kind of artist. And I guess my thing is, if I create it, partly, I mean, I created it for myself, created it because it was just in my head, I was inspired. If I'm going to create it, I'm going to try to share it. I'm going to try to get people to see it, as many people as I can to see it and hear it. Because one person coming up to you and saying, yo, I vibe with that song. Remember that song you had years ago? Or when you said this, that hit me that way. It's not a lot of people, but the people that it is, it means a lot because you're like, wow, something that was completely derived from me, that was its inception was in my brain, is now manifested in the world and somebody else can appreciate it and hear it. It's just a cool thing. And I think what gave me okay, I've had these songs for a while and it's been years in the making, and I shot these two videos a year ago, like the summer of 2020, 2004, but they didn't come out till 2025 in the fall. That's that balance. Our society, there's an interesting thing, and I'm not going to delve too far off track, but we have norms and things, and part of me, as this lawyer, as this scholar of history, as this intellectual, is scared and frustrated at some of the erosion of some of our norms over time in different ways. But in other ways, it's kind of liberating, right? There's norms that nobody necessarily feels like, especially with this content creator and this millennial hustle culture where we're somebody after work and we're somebody in work and we're not as questioned anymore because, hey, when the guy from the 60s was the teacher or the lawyer and he was playing in a John Denver tribute band or a Bruce Springsteen band after work at a bar guitar, no one said, oh, that's crazy, you're too edgy. And now that millennials are coming of age, no one says that doing hip hop after work is so edgy because it's old school. It's not even like the stuff they're doing now. It's like it's just part of our generation. But also the collapsing norms, the kind of, well, we can kind of just say what's on our mind. We can kind of just be blunt. We can just be out with who we are. And we're not so scared of these rigid standards and these rigid things that you try to put on people. Kind of gave me the confidence really over the last couple of years, and being, I think, more secure in my career, secure in who I am, knowing, hey, I'm resilient. If something changes or I say something and rub somebody the wrong way, or my style here doesn't match my style there and it's not a fit, I'm good. I'll survive. I've done enough to know I'll survive. And so it was kind of like, I'm just going to put it out. It's part of who I am. It's something I created. I think people should hear it, whether they love it or not. It went from being apprehensive about, do I even want to put this out because it's my rap side and my old self and I'm now this other person in some ways. I got past that, and then it was kind of like, well, what if I put it out and it flops and everybody's like, this is whack? Then that was getting over that hump, and I finally was like, just put the confidence, put it out, and it's done. I've gotten a pretty good reaction so far, so it's like, okay, it was worth it. And I think just being comfortable in your own skin and comfortable with whatever society wants to throw at you when you're in your own skin and being ready to take it for what it is. Like, I used to get upset over a comment on one of my football podcasts if it was derogatory or said I didn't do a good job. I don't care anymore. Like, there's enough good positivity coming my way, and I've done enough in life, and I know we're all finite individuals. We're not immortals. I gotta just live my life, and I don't really care what everybody says all the time. And so, hey, it's coming out. Don't really care what happens. I'm ready for it. I'm confident in what I'm putting out. It's true to me, and I'm down with representing this. None of us are one-dimensional. None of us are two-dimensional. We are multi-dimensional beings, and it's okay to embrace all the dimensions and aspects and perspectives of who you are. And if society doesn't like it or people don't like it, oh well, you'll survive.
And yeah, so that comes with living experience through the years. It's one thing I think people need to be confident in themselves and kind of get over the imposter syndrome, whether it's professional or personal, personal passions. I mean, and that's easier said than done. You kind of have to like build a thick skin, and I mean, we all are human, so it's all gonna like affect us at one point or another. But that's kind of something we have to get through life. But like, I think it's important that you've experienced that. And like, I'm open. This is who I am, and society is becoming a little bit more open to be like, that's who you are. Cool, do it. Like, I'm gonna rock with you. It's kind of, that's how it seems like if you're just being accepting of, oh yeah, he does music and he does that. Sweet. Ooh, that's so cool. I gotta check that out. You end up when you're like more open in who you are and more open to accept the people, what they're providing with the passions, the business, the music. You just kind of like, you both get to become artist and a fan, and vice versa, and both a patron and a consumer. It just kind of feels like it goes full circle, and it just keeps the ecosystem of, again, a well-built community thriving.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Well, I like to do a little bit of fire questions. I'll start off with an easy one. Miles Davis or Coltrane?
Coltrane.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. You had the post in the background. I wasn't sure if you're going to screw up on that.
Coltrane just does it a little more for me. I love
No, they're both great. It's all the preference. All right. Black and white photography or color photography?
Color.
Would you prefer jazz lounge club or more of like a hip-hop venue?
Depends on my mood, honestly. Like, yeah. Hip-hop, if it's a hip-hop jazzy lounge type spot, that's my joint. But sometimes I want piano music or a jazz club and I want to sip something or have a cigar, listen to that. Sometimes I want to be in a hip-hop vibe. Like on a Friday night, I got to let loose. I got to blow off some steam. I want to be hearing that hip-hop. I want to just be in my zone, locked in and vibing.
Oh, that's always fun. Do you prefer more solo creative time, or do you want more collaborative efforts?
I love the collaborative efforts to share it at the end, and I think that's a huge part of who I am and my feeling like included in the art world and connecting with awesome people. But I really enjoy the process and solitude of the editing process, for instance, or the video editing process or the recording process. I like being in my own mind. It's a cathartic experience for me, and it's an important solitude and reset for me. So I like the solo kind of artistic creation a lot.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Nice.
All day,
That's
every day.
yeah.
Coffee.
Oh yeah, we're
Coffee. I like espresso. The harder the better. Iced coffee, black coffee, just a touch of cream. I love coffee. Every morning is coffee.
This is the question that I've seen the Inside Actor Studio, and I've always wanted to ask if I would ever do have my own show. What's your favorite curse word?
Oh, for sure the F word. Want me to say it? The word. It's a great curse word. You can apply it to all different situations. It can act as all these different things, nouns, verbs.
It's very expressive.
Great. It's diverse. It's wonderful, and it gives a lot of Jersey attitudes.
All right, Larry, thank you very much. And where can people find you, just like the criminals you put away? Specifically, give your actual home address. Joking aside, but where can people find you?
So Exquisite Grit, it just spelled with an X, like exquisite_grit on Instagram is if you want to track my photography. That Exquisite Grit is also a bunch of other platforms I'm trying to expand. So find me there. IL Lusciato, IL Lusciato. I'm sure Joel will put it in the description. Search that on YouTube for my music videos and singles, and on every major platform for singles. Be on the lookout for the album. And if you just search my name, there's all kinds of little tidbits out in the interwebs you could look and find that I've created or things about me.
Yeah, there's various articles and writings from you, so it's great to see. All right, well, appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.